Hello folks, and welcome to Jack Reviews Musicals. My name is Jack, and I am a musical theater superfan based in St. Louis, Missouri. This is my YouTube channel where I share my thoughts on all of the musical productions that I see in the St. Louis area. In this video, I will be sharing my thoughts on the Muny's now closed 6th production of their 107th season, La Cage aux Folles, which played August 8th through the 14th of 2025. This is the second production of La Cage aux Folles that the Muny has ever done, with their first one being in 1986, 40 years ago, but during this gap it has been no less beloved in St. Louis, or even the world in general, really. La Cage aux Folles has become one of the most respected musicals in the world, with a timeless story based on the non-musical play of the same name by Jean Porret, adapted by Harvey Fierstein, a brilliant score by Broadway heavyweight Jerry Herman, and production values that brought drag to the Great White Way like nothing else. The original Broadway production won the Tony Award for Best Musical and Best Revival of a Musical for both of the Broadway revivals in 2005 and 2010, making it the first revival to ever do so in Tony's history. If you haven't seen La Cage aux Folles, the musical, the play, or even the movie that was eventually adapted from it, you probably know the basic story through The Birdcage, the 1996 modern American remake created by husband and wife comedy duo Mike Nichols and Elaine May, featuring an all-star cast of some of the biggest comedians and character actors of the time. The late Robin Williams, the late Gene Hackman, Nathan Lane, Diane Wiest, Hank Azaria, and Christine Baranski. So if you've seen that, you already know the basic premise of the show, except the musical is a lot more faithful to the original play, starting with the same locale, Saint-Tropez, in the French Riviera. The title, La Cage aux Folles, refers to a drag show that is owned and operated by Georges and Alban, a gay couple of 20 years. The two of them are complete opposites of each other. Georges, the show's MC, is a very traditionally masculine gay man, whereas Alban is more the stereotypical screaming queen that we typically associate with gay people in the media. Alban is the show's star attraction, the fabulous drag queen Zaza, who performs alongside the notorious La Cagelles, who are the representations of every possible drag act that you could imagine. The inciting incident of the story has the whole club being thrown into a dither when it's revealed that Jean-Michel, Georges and Alban's adult son, is getting married. And the person that Jean-Michel is marrying is Anne Dindon, the daughter of Edouard Dindon, a conservative politician who is actively campaigning for the criminalization of drag and homosexuality. If you've been paying attention for the last few years, that should sound familiar. Now the Dindons want to meet Jean-Michel's family to bless the marriage. Jean-Michel is so concerned about his parents' appearance that he forces them to pretend to be upright, fundamentalist, God-fearing, straight Christians, with Alban assigned to play the role of Jean-Michel's uncle, and Jean-Michel's birth mother taking the role of Georges' wife, even though the birth mother had not been in Jean-Michel's life for a long time, and Alban has been more of a mother figure than the mother ever was. And obviously, this drives a wedge between Alban and Jean-Michel. Like, Alban is absolutely crushed, insulted, disrespected to the very core of his being. So he decides that he's going to teach his family and the Dindons a thing or two about homosexual acceptance by putting his drag skills to use and attending the dinner as Jean-Michel's mother. Hijinks ensue, though for the Muny's presentation of it, a little too many hijinks, if you ask me. The first production of La Cage that I ever saw was New Line Theater's production in 2019, before I even started Jack Reviews Musicals. When New Line did it at the Marcel Theater, they gave it the usual intimate, immersive quality to all of their productions that works really well for La Cage aux Folles, because it is at its heart a comedy of manners with some farce, but a lot of it is just family drama. And that intimacy and immediacy that New Line gave it really let the material sing. The Muny's presentation of it was directed by Marcia Milgram Dodge, a director whose work I love. For this production, she went down the same road that she did when directing Anything Goes from last year, turning the show into a chaotic firecracker, except at La Cage, it's through the lens of queer euphoria, letting the drag explode onto the stage. Let the tropical setting explode onto the stage. It's bright, it's glittery, it's camp in its purest form, but I think for a show like La Cage, that might have been misguided. Treating a musical farce like this little ball of chaos that never slows down for a second, that approach really works for a show like Anything Goes. Because Anything Goes is an old school vaudevillian musical comedy that's very broad, very stylized, and not at all concerned with realism. It's more focused on being a perpetual laugh machine than anything else, and that really works. But La Cage aux Folles is an intimate family drama. It's a comedy of manners. Harvey Fierstein's book is very funny, but it also explores really important issues, like the heartbreak that parents feel when their children don't see eye to eye with them, the heartbreak that queer people feel when they are deemed unacceptable because they were born the way they are. That side of La Cage makes the other side, where it's celebrating drag culture and really letting it shine, it makes those stand out all the more. The Muny's La Cage took that queer euphoria to 11, using the stage's size to take the drag of it all as far as it could go. Honestly, as impressive as it was that they went as far as they did with it, it intruded onto the intimate heart-to-heart moments in a way that was very comically over the top. It was funny, but moments like what I'm about to say rob La Cage of its heart. There's a running gag where Jacob, George and Alban's flaming gay housekeeper, he does that cartoon gag where he walks out of the room in one exit and then keeps popping up at different points in the apartment set where the exit doesn't normally lead to it. The title musical number climaxes in this gigantic can, complete with basket tosses, glitter, fireworks. In Act 2, another song number, Masculinity, Georges gives Alban a crash course in how to act straight, and it ends with Alban presenting himself as a stereotypical straight black man. It's moments like these that to me just feel excessive. Even for a show like La Cage that is centered around drag, it just felt like as a gay man, I was very much being pandered to. Something that I have to give this production a lot of credit for. It was the first that I have seen / heard of where the main roles of Georges, Alban, Jean-Michel, and the Dendons were all played by black actors. That casting decision was honestly brilliant, but I will say the production's overemphasis on the farce and the comedy ended up causing the performances to be rather bland. And I'm gonna tell you why that's a damn shame, because you have in the roles of Georges and Alban, musical theater legends Norm Lewis and Michael James Scott. Norm Lewis, Broadway legend, musical theater darling, resident baritone, easygoing charm, a physique that makes you want to climb him like a tree. Or is that just me? Am I alone on that? He was the perfect fit to play Georges, who is a very suave, debonair MC type of character, being the ironic straight man that keeps Alban grounded. Michael James Scott, widely renowned in the Broadway scene during his tenure as the genie on Aladdin, which, may I need to add, came after he graduated from Webster University's Conservatory of Theater Arts in St. Louis and played at the Muny in the early 2000s. The genie is a very similar role to Alban. He is a larger-than-life personality with an intense sense of physicality and costuming that is simply extravagant. Not even to mention bravura comedic chops. But with the Muny's over-the-top comedy approach, their acting strong suits were underutilized here. Their chemistry together was nice. You bought them as a couple, but it's all surface level. The drama of the story, the hurt that they feel because of Jean-Michel, is more like an inconvenience to them in this production than a serious betrayal, as indicated in the script. Even their voices don't really mesh well with these characters given this approach. Norm Lewis performs Georges' romantic ballads Song of the Sand, one of my favorite songs in the musical canon, he was as stiff as a board, and the final belt that he pulls at the end of the song was quite awkward. The Act 1 finale, I Am What I Am, has Alban masterfully assert his identity as an out and proud gay man and drag artist. But Michael James Scott, there wasn't emotional depth there. There was a lack of pain and hurt and disappointment that makes the emotion of the song really hit. I don't think this production really did the hard work to make Norm Lewis and Michael James Scott's performances land. Trading it for wackiness that is funny, but just feels like they're doing too much. And the same thing can be said for the other pair of parents too, the Dandons, played here by Terrence Archie and Allison Blackwell. They're just one-note uptight conservatives whose bigotry comes off more as affectation, more cartoonish. Cartoonish is certainly where Terrence Archie goes on us. When he, as Edouard, realizes Alban's ruse, disguising him as the mother, he literally goes, "These men are homosexuals," with every fiber of his being. Like, it literally has the same energy as, "Oh, Georgia, I say this is most unorthodox." Where was the grit in that? There was no heart there, just broad wackiness. But Allison Blackwell does nail the surprise coloratura soprano in the best of times. Mason Reeves as Jean-Michel plays the character more like a moody teenager than a young man head over heels in love with someone. He doesn't reach that level of frustration and anger with Georges and Alban that make the moments where they respond to his betrayal really land. There's a pivotal moment in Act 2 where Jean-Michel blows up at Georges for not seeing things his way. And Reeves does say these lines with a level of frustration and anger to it where you can feel the emotion, but not necessarily the intention or meaning. And it does not make Georges' response, the beautiful song, look over there as beautiful or as elegant as it should. Cameron Anika Hill, however, does quite well in the unfortunately underwritten role of Anne. Hill portrays Anne as more fierce and confident in her love for Jean-Michel and her acceptance of his dad's than I initially gave the role credit for. The moments where Anne stands up to her parents were adequate enough, as was her chemistry with Mason Reeves as Jean-Michel, as milquetoast as he makes the character. Troy Iwata as Jacob, Lacage's butler, who would rather be a maid and in the show, dragged his feet a bit in his portrayal. He lacked a lighter-than-air quality that should make this quippy character with sharp comedic timing and sudden entrances laugh-out-loud funny. The only piece of physical comedy from Troy Iwata that I found legitimately hilarious was him fumbling with the Dandon suitcases. That was great. Megan Murphy was a welcome enough presence as the elegant Jacqueline, the restaurateur who is very good friends with Georges and Alban. Rounding out the cast are Michael Hartung as Francis, Lacage's harried, mousy stage manager, who starts a relationship with Michael Milkanen as Hannah, the Dami-Mommy Kajel. Their dynamic together was quite fun in the little moments that they have on stage. The musical direction by Daryl Archibald was fine. The Jerry Herman score was strong and brassy, but a lot of the singing, like I said before, left a little to be desired. Particularly The Best of Times, which is probably my favorite song in the show. Shout out to Jackass 2, by the way. They even did a sing-along for the curtain call at the end, but I didn't really hear a lot of people singing along to it, and honestly, I wasn't really up for it either, and I think that should tell you something. The choreography by Richard J. Hines was inspired. Flag twirling, the can-can, the basket tossing during the title number, the sashaying in the opening song, even the waltzes during With You on My Arm from both Georges and Alban and Jean-Michel and Anne. All of the dancing in this production was superb, and by far the production's biggest star is the production design, which I described as this explosion of color and light and glitter, and there's no other way to describe it but that. On every front possible, the Muny's visuals are bursting to the eye. Like I said before, this level of extravagance and frills and bells and whistles being put into the look and feel of La Cage aux Folles isn't something that I believe is entirely necessary, but it's still impressive that they even did all of this in the first place and pulled it off as well as they did. Bobby Pierce's costumes and Tommy Kurzman's wigs were characters unto themselves, crafting hundreds of unique looks for every cast member. La Cagel's sparkled with every possible drag routine in every number that they are featured. Alban's looks as Zaza, impeccable. George's blazers, they needed to be added to my wardrobe yesterday. Jacob's butler outfit during the family dinner was hysterical. The only outfits that I did not care for were Jacob's outfits earlier in the show. The outfits feature really chunky shoes that I don't think are appropriate for the character. And of course, there's the one where Alban starts fronting as Uncle Al, complete with a Cardinals baseball cap, a very local reference that was very cringy. You really did not need it to sell this bit. But as for the rest of it, the drag, it just kept on topping itself throughout the show. They keep building and building an extravagance until the show's resolution. Captivating. The set design by Matthew Buttry pops with tropical vibes. Lots of rounded patterns, vibrant pinks, blues, purples, and greens. The stage is almost blinding with how much it's just covered in frills and sequins. The way that the apartment is changed, you can't help but laugh at it. There's great uses of the painted booms of the palm tree-laden coast of Saint-Tropez. They were beautifully atmospheric, augmented by the projection design by Kylie Lara and Greg Emitas. Projections that figure prominently into the title number, as does the lighting by Jason Lyons. My favorite piece of lighting in the entire show is the very end of the first act, after I Am What I Am. Alban storms out of the theater with George looking on, standing stage right with a blinding light coming onto him from stage left. Act 1 ends with the booms closing in on the light, making the light into a pin until it goes completely black, leaving George completely alone in the dark and letting you sit with the weight of the heartbreak that the two main characters felt in that moment. That visual alone conveyed the emotion of this story better than anything else from this production. The Muny's production of La Cage aux Folles this past summer is actually proof of a theory that I have about musical comedy as an art form. Well, comedy in general, not even musical comedy, really. It should be treated with as much sincerity, as much honesty, and as much authenticity as a straightforward drama, especially when you have a story like La Cage aux Folles that deals with important universal themes about identity, how you assert your identity, and of course about loving your family for who they are, and all of the different ways they express their identity. When you create a production that emphasizes goofiness of the script's antics a bit too much, it doesn't matter how over the top it is or how dazzling and impressive the visuals are. If the heart isn't there, everything just comes off as shallow, I'm sorry to say. At the Muny, this material didn't sing as loud as I thought it should. The intensity was there, but the meaning was lacking. The Muny presented La Cage aux Folles with the biggest of hearts and the best of intentions. Maybe I was spoiled by seeing a smaller scale production that thrived on the story's intimacy, or my love for a movie that took this story and represented its issues respectfully. I really could have been spoiled by that. That doesn't stop the Muny's La Cage aux Folles not really making the grade for me. But what the hell do I know? Did you see the Muny's production of La Cage aux Folles? I know it was loved by a lot of people, including a lot of the critics that reviewed it here in St. Louis. If you were one of those people, what did you think about it? What was it about the show that you loved so much, that you really connected with? on a production level. Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and let me know, because I really do think I'm missing something here. But if you enjoyed me sharing my thoughts on this production, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more St. Louis musical theater reviews coming very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, long live the musical!